حبیب خدا خاتم الانبیاء بآواز بلند صلوات. فاتحة.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. صلوات. We have gathered this evening to commemorate the wafat of our 7th Imam, Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam. As well as to remember his grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, Hazrat Abu Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, who is indeed known as Muhsin Islam. Muhsin means somebody who has helped Islam, who has made a favor to Islam, because he was the one who became the custodian of the Prophet. He is the one who protected the Prophet of Islam to the extent that we see, as long as Abu Talib was alive, the mushrikeen of Mecca did not dare physically harm the Prophet of Islam. They tried propaganda, they tried bribing him, they tried socio-political boycott against the entire Banu Hashim, but they never dare touch the Prophet of Islam himself. This only happened after the passing away of Hazrat Abu Talib. And so this is to his credit, and when our historians name him as a Muhsin Islam, this is a true tribute to Hazrat Abu Talib. The fact, and I am repeating myself, but there are some things which have to be repeated, that if you look at the impact of his tarbiyyat, the upbringing of the children by him and Fatima bint Asad, it was so powerful that if you go from his own time, the days of the Prophet, to Amir al-Mu'mineen, to Imam Hassan, to Imam Hussein, and you look at the events of Karbala, when we divide the ashab of Imam Hussein on one side and the family of Imam Hussein on the other side, we say ashab of Hussein and Banu Hashim among the Shahadat. If you really look at the list of Banu Hashim, you will see that the proper name given to that group, The Shahadat of Banu Hashim are actually, all of them are Banu Abi Talib. Each one of the member of Ahlul Bayt who gave their life in Karbala for the sake of Islam, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of them were descendants of Abu Talib and Fatima bint Asad. And so it's not only that his ihsan is there on the Prophet's life, it continues. And one of the Imams who come from the line of Ali, all of them are his descendants. And so Abu Talib is not only Abu Talib, he is Abul A'imma. He is the father of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wassalam. Salawatullahi wa And one of the Imams from his descendants is our 7th Imam. When we look at his time, his imamat was one of those longer imamats then compared to the other Imams. His imamat continued for about 35 years. And that's a relatively long, time period. But he came at a time in history when the Ahlul Bayt went through very difficult times. Just to give you one example. Before the 6th Imam, although many things happened to the Imams before, but the Imams before the 6th Imam, each one of them had the opportunity to publicly name their successor. But by the time of the 6th Imam, the latter days of his life, when Mansur comes into power, things had become so oppressive for Shias that our 6th Imam could not publicly name Imam Musa al-Kadhim as his successor. Privately he had done that. Even the public wasiyyat that he had written, which was to be read publicly, did not name one individual. And our 6th Imam used a very ingenious way of confusing the enemies and informing the friends and followers by putting 5 names. And one of those 5 names was Imam Musa al-Kadhim. The Shias knew that, the 2 names, one was the Khalifa Mansur, one was his governor in Medina. They can't be the successor of the 6th Imam. And the 3rd name was the wife of the 6th Imam. We know a lady cannot become Imam. So these are all, disqualified. And then Imam added 2 more names. One, his older son, Abdullah, and then a younger son, Musa al-Kadhim. And the Shias, the Ashab of the Imams knew that if the older one was worthy of Imamat, Imam would never mention the name of the younger one. And that is how, the enemies were confused and the friends got the message that Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam is the successor of the 6th Imam. Salawatullahi wa But I don't want to go to history tonight. I would like to begin with the emphasis on his famous title, Al-Kadhim. Al-Kadhim is actually a short form of Al-Kazim al-Ghayz, which means somebody who controls the anger. And this issue of controlling our emotions, this is something which is very essential for our success in the hereafter. If you look at the ayat in Surah Al-Imran, the 3rd surah, ayat number 134, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the muttaqeen. But before that, let me read the ayat, 2 ayats before it, just to give you the preamble of that. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, la ta'kulu riba az'afan mudha'afatan, wattaqu allaha la'allakum tuflihun. O you who believe, do not, consume usury, riba. And then wattaqullah, and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that you may become successful. وَاتَّقُوا النَّارَ الَّتِي أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. Number 3, fear the fire of Jahannam, which has been prepared for those who are non-believers. وَعَتِيُوا اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. Number 4, obey Allah and Rasul so that you may see the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَسَارِعُوا إِلَى مَغْفِرَةٍ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. And move quickly towards the forgiveness from your Lord. وَجَنَّةٍ, and towards the Jannah, أَرْضُهَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. And that Jannah is so vast, it covers the space of the earth and the heavens altogether. أُعِدَّتْ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. Unlike the fire which has been prepared for the kafirin, Allah says this Jannah has been prepared for the muttaqeen. Who are the muttaqeen? This is the ayat where Allah says, الَّذِينَ يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. The first quality of muttaqeen is that they are those who give in charity in good times as well as difficult times. But they give. When their financial situation is good, they give more. When the financial situation is restrained, they still give, maybe less. And number 2, وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ. The second quality of the muttaqeen is that they control their anger. وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Number 3, they forgive the mistakes of the people. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And Allah loves those who do good. Salawat. And so this issue of being al-Kadhimin al-Ghayz, to restrain the anger, this is such an important issue that the famous title of the Imam, 7th Imam, has become al-Kadhim. And I would just like to slightly digress with inspiration from this title of the 7th Imam, al-Kadhim. Because the essential message that we have is that we have to control our emotions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created 2 kinds of emotions within us. And these emotions and feelings that we have, these are important. These are not to be totally suppressed. But we have to control it and express that, or give into the emotions within the bounds of the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, when we look at the issue of anger, al-Kadhim al-Ghayz, somebody who controls the anger. From the perspective of Islamic ethics, the balanced personality is of a person who balances, this issue of the emotions that we have. You don't have to be always angry, otherwise you'll become a very unhealthy person within yourself. But you don't have to suppress your anger totally. You should know where you have to be angry, and you should know where you have to restrain your anger. When you become angry, it should be to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you restrain your anger, that also should be for the sake of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you come to that balance. Otherwise, if somebody is just angry all the time, then he is a slave of his emotions. And if somebody suppresses the anger, even when he is supposed to be angry, then that is the sign of a person who is coward. So you have to have that balance in between, that you have to see the time and place where you have to, express your emotions, and the time and place where you have to control your emotions. Al-Kadhim al-Ghayz deals with the issue of suppressing the anger. But in Islamic ethics, we are told there are 2 powerful emotions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. Before I talk to the other one, can we ask the brothers to move on this side, please? There are two emotions which are considered to be the basis of every other emotion that we have in our system. One is known as ghazab, anger, and this is where al-Kadhim al-Ghayz refers to, but there is other side of it. The second emotion is known as Shahadat, desire, greed. Just as we have to restrain and control the emotion which is known as ghadab and anger, similarly, and this is what I would like to slightly digress, but inspired from the title of the Imam, talk about the other side of it. That when it comes to the issue of shahwat, the desire that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created within us, that is not to be totally suppressed. It can be fulfilled, but the balance is that it should be fulfilled within the bounds of the Islamic Sharia. And when we look at this issue, normally the ulama of akhlaq, they talk about shahwat in two forms. This is just a very general division that we are doing. One is on the issue of food and drinks, and the other is as far as the sexual desires are concerned. We have to restrain. Nobody says Islam says that don't eat and drink. No. We have to eat and drink. But we should see, is it halal and tayyib or not? Is it halal and healthy or not? Similarly, when we talk about the issue of sexual desires, we have to make sure that it is fulfilled according to the ways in which Islam has allowed it. And the rulings and the teachings are very clear about this issue. And this is where I would like to briefly talk about this issue of restraining and controlling this other emotion known as shahwat and desire, especially in the context of sexual behavior. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran, it's very interesting to see that He uses the terms la taqrabu. Taqrabu, la taqrabu. Do not even go close. It's not an issue of saying don't do this. That's haram, of course. Quran says la taqrabu. Do not even go close to indecencies. What does that mean? Do not even put yourself in a situation where you will be led to commit a haram. And when we look at this issue, we have to realize that, this is an ongoing issue. Every human being goes through these emotions and feelings. Every society goes through these problems, especially in the modern times, of course, where there is freedom. There is no bounds and limits when it comes to inappropriate behavior, especially when we talk about child abuse. It's a problem, doesn't know any religious boundaries, doesn't know any racial boundaries, doesn't know any economic status, doesn't recognize the difference in political spheres either. And when we look at this issue, there was a time I used to, when I would talk about it in the khutbahs or other places, I would say, this problem exists at all levels of the society. And I would give examples of others. I would say, look at the president in the Oval Office of the White House. He had a problem. Look at the very senior bishop in Boston in the Catholic Church had gone through this problem. Look at the former president of IMF has gone through this problem of not being able to deal with their own desires and restrain them. But then, unfortunately, last year we got an example in Toronto itself. An imam of one of the masajid was arrested in the allegation of abusing children whom he was teaching Quran in his own house. And it was a very sad story for us to hear about it. That, well, it's even among the Muslims. But then, in my mind, I said, okay, it's not Muslims and Muslims. But then we come to realize that, well, it's not confined to other sects either. When you look at the global Shia community at the moment, you hear about things. That even in our, community, the Shia community in general, there are problems. And this is where we have to realize that, we have to be very vigilant about our children. There is no ni'mat greater than the children that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to us. Absolutely nothing. This building doesn't mean anything. The millions that we raise doesn't mean anything. The bank balance that we would have doesn't mean anything. The business, the prestige, the honor, the name, the family do not mean anything when you compare with the ni'mat that Allah has given to us in form of our own children. And we have to be vigilant. We have to know where they are, with whom they are, every second of their life. Sometimes, when we take things for granted, especially in situations where it is, one-on-one. When we talk about some of the issues, we hear complaint from children. Trust me. Why do not my parents trust me? Baba, the problem is not whether we trust you or not. We don't trust this society. And we don't want to take this chance. You might feel bad about it, but if we say this is not going to happen, it's not going to happen. I would rather take chance in making you unhappy for one day, rather than go through a situation where there might be a risk. And this is the issue that we have to keep in our minds at all the time, even when it comes to religious kinds of activities. One-on-one, either it is supervised by others, or it is an open area, or an area where anybody can come in at any time. Because we do not want, we should not take risks when it comes to the next generation and to our own children. Salawat alayhi. Sleepovers. I know I will be told you're traditionalist and this and that. You can put whatever labels you want. I already have many, many labels on me anyway. Sleepovers. Even among families. Look at the statistics now. You will see many of these situations of abuse happen between the child and somebody who is related to the child. It's not an issue of you don't trust your, relative or brother or sister or cousin or uncle or aunt. No. When it comes to our children, they are very precious. You don't want to take any chance. What does the Sharia say about it? There are certain rules and regulations. We know about the food, one element of shahwa. We say this is haram, don't eat. This is najis, don't eat. Do you know that even when we talk about the issues of decency, indecency, in interaction, even among children, there are rules and regulations about it? Interestingly, just this morning I was looking at the Masail of Ayatollah Sistani, where he talks about the issue of the duty of the guardians to protect their children. Of course, there is an ayat of Quran which says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum an-nar. O you who believe, rescue yourselves and your family from the fire. The fire whose fuel would be human beings and stones. Referring to the fire of Jahannam. So it is wajib. It is wajib upon us to rescue and protect our children from going to the fire of Jahannam. But the interesting thing for me in his mas'ala was that he talked about the duty. It's wajib on the guardian to protect the child from whatever is harmful or seems to be harmful. And then he says it's also wajib on the guardian of the child to protect the child from what is disliked by the Sharia. In giving the examples, he doesn't talk about food and drink. He brings it later on. The first things he talks about is sexual indecency and the issue of intoxication. And are there rules about it or not? Let me give you some of the ahadith from our imams on this issue. Salawat upon the Akbar. Mas'ala number 1. Putting a 6-year-old girl on your lap. A girl who is not mahram to you. Maybe part of the extended family. Or circle of friends. Is it allowed or not? Look at this hadith. There is a person who says, I asked the 6th Imam, that there is a girl who has no mahram relationship with a man, and he hugs her, kisses her. This is where the Imam says, فَقَالَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ إِذَا أَتَى عَلَيْهَا 6 سِنِينَ, when she reaches 6 years old, فَلَا تَضَعْهَا عَلَى حِجْرِكَ, do not put her on your lap. This is number 1. This is the Shahadat of the 7th Imam. Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salatu wassalam had a brother-in-law by the name of Abu al-Hasan Muhammad bin Ibrahim from Abbasid side of Banu Hashim, where during the time of Banu Hashim he even ended up to become the governor of Mecca. He was married to Fatima bint Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. So he was son-in-law of the 6th Imam, brother-in-law of the 7th Imam. The narrator says that the Imam was once in his house in Mecca. And of course Muhammad bin Ibrahim was an affluent person, he was the governor. And as a father he wanted to dress his daughter with the best of clothes. And she had the habit to come into the gathering of the men. You know, people will hug her, kiss her. When she came to the 7th Imam, now I don't know whether she's the daughter of Imam's sister or the daughter of Muhammad bin Ibrahim from another wife. That's not clear for me from the hadith that we have. But when she came close to Imam Musa al-Kadhim, أَمْسَكَهَا بِيَدَيْهِ مَبْدُودَتَانِ, Imam in a way stopped her with his 2 hands extended. And then he says to everyone, even if she was the niece and mahram, but probably Imam wanted to use this opportunity to talk about this mas'ala, where he says, إِذَا أَتَتْ عَلَى الْجَارِيَةِ 6 سِنِينَ, when the girl becomes 6 years old, لَمْ يَجُزْ أَنْ يُقَبِّلُهَا رَجُلٌ لَيْسَتْ هِيَ بِمَحْرَمٍ لَهُ. When she becomes 6 years old, it is not permissible for a man who is not mahram to her to kiss her or hug her. I hear situations where people say, but Maulana, and we are not even talking about 6 years, we're talking about 13-year-old girl. She said, but when she was born, I was there because she is the daughter of my friend. We were so close. I was at the hospital when she was born. She is like daughter to me. Okay, she is like a daughter to you, that's okay. that doesn't create the relationship of father and son between you. The Sharia laws are clear. After 6 years, you have to have that distance. Mahramiyat comes in, hurmat comes in. It is an issue of respecting the sanctity of the person of opposite gender. Salawat alayhi. We are talking about outsiders and children. What about children themselves? It is highly recommended when children reach the age of 10, their beds should be separate. Look at this hadith quoted in Shia books as well as Sunni books from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. Where he says, as-sabi was-sabi, a male child and a male child, brothers maybe. Was-sabi was-sabiyya, a male child and a female child. Was-sabiyya was-sabiyya, female child, female child. يفرق بينهم في المضاجع لعشر السنين. When they reach 10 years old, their beds should be separated. There is another hadith from our Imams where the age is 6 years old. And so when we look at this issue, this is where we come to realize this concept of Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تقربوا. Do not even go in the direction or near a situation which might lead to indecency. And these are real issues. It's not about 1400 years ago, from day of Adam till now. Because we are still human beings, we have those emotions and feelings within us. The challenges were before, the challenges are there now, and these challenges would be there even in the future. And these masail are not just there for the books. We have confined Islam to halal food and drink. These issues of interaction also are an important part of our life. We have to learn about it, know the limits, and this is one way of protecting our own children. Salawat. The issue of not touching a non-mahram person of the opposite gender, not shaking hands. Again, it goes back to this issue. It's nothing to do whether the other person is being considered to be unclean. There was a story recently I recited on even the Friday khutbah, I think 2 weeks ago, where one of the deputy minister of health in Israel, who came from ultra-orthodox sect of Judaism, refused to shake hands with one of the European ministers of health. She was a lady. And she became very offended. She says, "Oh, I'm not dirty. We have the same ruling." It's not the issue whether you are dirty or clean or pak or najis. In Islam, when we look at the issue of a person of opposite gender, there is a hurmat. Hurmat means there is a sanctity which I cannot violate by touching that person. That person has a physical sanctity and hurmat. Hurmat is not only on the negative side, it's also on positive side. Kaaba has a hurmat, Quran has the hurmat. We cannot violate, the hurmat of those, sacred things. Similarly, we cannot violate the hurmat of the other person's body. And this is where the issue comes up when we say we are not allowed to have physical contact, even shaking hands with the person of opposite gender who are not related to us. Salawat alaykum. Let me emphasize on the point of one-on-one situation with the one hadith from Amir al-Mu'minin Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. And this is about the adults, not about children. Where Ali says, لا يخلو بامرأة رجل. A man who is not mahram to the other woman should not be found in a secluded area, alone. Why? Then the Imam says, فما من رجل خلا بامرأة إلا كان الشيطان ثالثهما. If there is a place in seclusion where there is a man and a woman who are not mahram to one another, Imam says, be sure the third person present there will be the shaitan. He will try to create a situation. And this is where even avoiding those kinds of situations is an example of la taqrabu, do not even go close. And this doesn't matter whether it's a religious issue, a secular gathering, or whatever, because the problems are across the board in the society. Salawat alayhi wa sallam. इंसान के लिए इम्तिहान ज़िंदगी में सिर्फ दो लफ्ज़ में है, या हम अब्दुल्लाह बने या हम अब्दुश्शहवा बने, या खुदा के बंदे बने या अपने शहवत के बंदा बने। 7वें इमाम के ज़माने में एक शख्स था, वेल ऑफ बगदाद में। इमाम का गुज़र हुआ उस गली से और देखा कि उसके घर से गाने बजाने की आवाज़ आ रही है और ये खम्र और इंटॉक्सिकेंट्स की जो वेसल्स होते हैं वो सब फेंके जा रहे थे, कनीज़ जो है गार्बेज फेंक रही थी। इमाम रुके और इमाम ने उस कनीज़ से पूछा कि ये तुम्हारे घर का जो मालिक है, अहुवा हुर्रुन अम अब्दुन, ये आज़ाद है या ग़ुलाम? तो कनीज़ ने कहा ऑफ कोर्स वो आज़ाद है। तो इमाम ने कहा यकीनन ये आज़ाद है, अगर बंदा होता खुदा का, ग़ुलाम होता खुदा का, तो उसके घर से न ये आवाज़ आती न इस टाइप के बर्तन हम देखते। इमाम तो चले गए, लेकिन इस शख्स का नाम था बिश्र। उसने जब देखा कि कनीज़ के वापस आने में ज़रा टाइम लगा, पूछा क्यों देर हो गई बाहर? उसने कहा एक इंसान गुजर रहा था, उसने ये सवाल किया आपके बारे में। अगरचे इमाम का ये मैसेज या नसीहत डायरेक्टली नहीं आई थी, इनडायरेक्टली कनीज़ के ज़रिए आई है, लेकिन इतना पावरफुल इम्पैक्ट था कि बिशर जैसा एफ्लुएंट आदमी उसी तरह से नंगे पैर दौड़ता हुआ बाहर गया ताकि उस शख्स से मिल सके। जाता है इमाम के करीब पहुंचा, इमाम के हाथ का बोसा दिया, माफ़ी मांगी अपने करतूत की वजह से, और उस वक्त को याद रखने के लिए उसने तहैया कर लिया कि फिर वो दोबारा कभी भी चप्पल नहीं पहनेगा, न शूज़। और इसलिए उसका नाम हिस्ट्री में है बिश्र अल-हाफी, बिश्र द बेयर फुटेड पर्सन। और इतना मुक़द्दस हो गया कि सूफियों में जो मास्टर्स एंड डिसाइपल्स के जो चेन है उसमें एक नाम आता है बिश्र अल-हाफी का। तो खुद इमाम हमें सबक दे रहे हैं कि देखो अगर बंदा तो बनना ही है, ग़ुलाम तो बनना ही है। चॉइस है, या तो शहवत के ग़ुलाम बनो या खुदा के ग़ुलाम बनो। और यही सीरत है जो इमाम ने हमें दी है। इमाम के ज़िंदगी में कुरान के वाक़यात में भी आप देखें, जनाब यूसुफ का जो वाक़या है ये सिर्फ क़िस्सा नहीं है, वहाँ भी जनाब यूसुफ अलैहिस्सलाम को एक ख़ातून ने गुमराह करने की कोशिश की, इसलिए कि प्रॉब्लम्स दोनों तरफ से हो सकते हैं, सिर्फ एक साइड का नहीं है। लेकिन बहरहाल कुरान में खुद ही कहा है वरआ बुरहान रब्बिही, यूसुफ ने खुदा के उस बुरहान और हुज्जत को देखा और उन्होंने अपने को बचा लिया। इमाम मूसा काज़िम अलैहिस्सलाम के साथ भी इसी टाइप की एक सिचुएशन थी। हारून अगरचे बहुत ही मशहूर खलीफा माना जाता है, साहिब इल्म था और दौलत था और सिविलाइजेशन को उसने प्रमोट किया, لیکن جہاں تک ائمہ اہل بیت کی بات ہے یہ بہت ہی ظالم اور جابر شخص تھا. مدینہ میں گیا تھا زیارت کے لیے. زیارت رسول میں اس نے کہا السلام علیک یا ابن عم، سلام ہو آپ پر اے ہمارے کزن رسول اللہ کو. 7ویں امام اسی وقت آئے اور امام نے سلام کیا السلام علیک یا ابتا، سلام ہو میرے بابا پر، یعنی جد کو بھی بہرحال بابا کہتے ہیں. ہارون کو یہ پسند نہیں آیا کہ اچھا آپ اپنے کو رسول سے زیادہ قریب بتا رہے ہیں. آف کورس تھے، یہ آل فاطمہ میں سے ہیں. حکم دیتا ہے اسی وقت کہ امام کو گرفتار کیا گیا. وہاں سے بصرہ میں 1 سال سے زیادہ زندان میں رہے. پھر بغداد میں شفٹ کیا گیا، فضل بن ربی کے حوالے کیا گیا. وہ جب اس نے کہا ہارون سے کہ بھائی ہم ان کو اس طرح سے ہینڈل نہیں کر سکتے ہیں، ظلم نہیں کر سکتے ہیں، جو زہر جو دینا چاہ رہا ہے ہم نہیں دے سکتے ہیں. پھر ایک دوسرے اور فضل کے حوالے کیا گیا، فضل بن یحییٰ، اس نے بھی انکار کیا. آخر میں شاہق السندی کے حوالے کیا گیا جو چیف آف پولیس تھا ہارون کا. اس کے زمانے کا یہ واقعہ ملتا ہے کہ ہارون نے کوشش کی امام کے امیج کو ملائن کرنے کے لیے، گرانے کے لیے. ایک بہت ہی خوبصورت جوان کنیز کو بھیجا زندان میں اور کہا گیا کہ یہ آپ کی خدمت کے لیے آئی ہے. امام نے کہا کہ لا حاجت بها ولا لامثالها. امام نے جو لے کے آیا تھا اس کو اس سے کہا کہ اس کو لے جاؤ، ہمیں نہیں چاہیے، نہ یہ چاہیے نہ اس ٹائپ کی دوسری چاہیے، کچھ نہیں چاہیے. ہارون کو بہت غصہ آیا. اس نے کہا کہ اس کو واپس لے جاؤ اور کہو ان سے کہ ان کی مرضی کی بات نہیں ہے. ہم نے ان کو اریسٹ کیا ہے اپنی مرضی سے، جیل میں ڈالا ہے اپنی مرضی سے، اور خدمت کرنے والی بھیجیں گے اپنی مرضی سے، چوائس ان کا نہیں ہے. تو اس خوبصورت جوان کنیز کو بھیج دیا گیا. اب نیکسٹ ڈے کی بات ہے یا اسی دن کی بات ہے، آئی ایم ناٹ شیور، روایات میں اس طرح سے نہیں ہے. ہارون نے کسی اپنے آدمی کو بھیجا کہ جا کے دیکھو وہ کنیز کیا کر رہی ہے. واپس آتا ہے اور رپورٹ دیتا ہے کہ ہم نے اس کنیز کو دیکھا کہ وہ مسلسل سجدے میں پڑی ہے اور اس کے زبان پر ہے القدوس القدوس سبحانک سبحانک. ہارون نے کہا کہ لگتا ہے کہ موسیٰ کاظم نے اس پہ جادو کر دیا ہے، اسے نکال کے لے آؤ، آئسولیشن میں ڈال دو تاکہ باہر لوگوں تک یہ خبر نہ جائے کہ امام کا امپیکٹ اس کنیز پر کیا تھا. ہسٹری میں یہ ہے کہ یہ کنیز جو ہے امام کی شہادت سے پہلے ہی انتقال کر گئی. لیکن ایک فرق ہے حضرت یوسف میں اور امام موسیٰ کاظم میں. یوسف کے قصے میں یوسف نے اپنے کو بچا لیا، امام موسیٰ کاظم نے نہ صرف اپنے کو بچایا بلکہ اس کنیز کو بھی بچا لیا. اور یہی فرق آل محمد کی عظمت کی جو بات ہوتی ہے. اور اس لیے دشمن بہت کچھ کر چکے لیکن یہ کبھی بھی امام کے عظمت کو اور ان کے کمال کو ختم نہیں کر سکے. اور اسی زندان میں آخر میں حکم ہوتا ہے شاہق صندق ملعون کے ذریعے کہ امام کو زہر دیا جائے. اور امام اسی 25 رجب کی بات ہے کہ امام کی شہادت زہر کے ذریعے. شیخ مفید بھی جب ہسٹورین بنتے ہیں تو وہ اس ٹائپ کی روایات کو ایزیلی ایکسیپٹ نہیں کرتے، لیکن امام موسیٰ کاظم علیہ السلام کے سلسلے میں وہ کلیئرلی لکھتے ہیں کہ ہمارے یہاں جو ہسٹوریکل ایویڈنس ہے اس لحاظ سے بات بالکل کلیئر ہے کہ امام موسیٰ کاظم کو زہر کے ذریعے ہارون کے حکم سے شہید کیا گیا ہے. زداران حسین شہید ہر امام ہوا ہے، علی اور حسین قتل کے ذریعے، بقیہ دوسرے امام زہر کے ذریعے. لیکن ایک فرق ہے، جب جنازہ اٹھا ہے، امام کے لاش کو جب قید خانے سے نکالا گیا ہے شیعوں کو اذیت پہنچانے کے لیے ہارون کا حکم تھا کہ ان کے جسم کو اسی طرح سے، وہ زنجیر ابھی لگی ہوئی تھی ہاتھوں میں اور پیروں میں، انہی زنجیروں کے ساتھ جا کے پل بغداد پر چھوڑ دو، اعلان کرو کہ رافضی تمہارے امام کا انتقال ہو چکا ہے، آ کے دیکھو۔ لیکن وہاں ایک چچا تھا ہارون کا، بہرحال بنو ہاشم کے افراد تھے، اس نے جب یہ سنا ہے تو اس سے یہ برداشت نہ ہو سکا، وہ اپنے غلاموں کے ساتھ آتا ہے اور امام کے جنازے کو غسل دینے کے بعد اور کفن کے بعد تدفین کرتا ہے۔ عزاداران حسین آج امام رضا علیہ السلام کی خدمت میں اتنا کہیں گے کہ مولا یہ منفرد مصیبت تھی امام موسیٰ کاظم کی کہ یہ وہ امام ہے کہ جب شہادت پایا ہے اس نے تو ابھی اس کے جسم پر وہ ہتھکڑیاں اور زنجیریں لگی ہوئی تھی، لیکن ہارون کے جیسا چچا اس کا موجود تھا جس سے یہ احساس ہوا کہ یہ صحیح نہیں ہے۔ ہائے امام زین العابدین جن کے ہاتھوں میں ہتھکڑیاں لگی ہوئی تھی، وہ اپنے بابا کے لاش کو دیکھتے ہیں کربلا میں جس کیفیت سے چھوڑ کے جا رہے تھے کہ وہ نہ غسل دے سکے، نہ کفن دے سکے، نہ بابا کو دفن کر سکے۔ الا لعنۃ اللہ علی القوم الظالمین سیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون۔ ماتم حسین۔